Hello and welcome to the Long COVID Physio podcast. My name is Darren Brown. I'm a physiotherapist and I am living with long COVID. And today we have a very special guest. We have Daria. Daria, please introduce yourself.
Thank you for having me. So I'm Daria. I live in New Jersey in the United States. I am a physiotherapist. I work at an outpatient clinic called Proactivity, but we also work on site directly with employer clients, which is really fun. And I'm also a runner and a dancer.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to have a sip of my cup of tea because we're keeping this loose today, aren't we? So I'm going to have a little cup of my sip of tea. But honestly, Daria, this is not our first time on a rodeo, is it? We've done a podcast more than once before. So I'm actually really excited to do this one today with you because this one is just with you and me. And as much as we've met on Twitter and we've talked loads in our long COVID physio group, I don't know that we've ever had a one-on-one. So this feels quite nice and personal, like an audience with today. So I'm really excited for this.
Oh, me too. When I can't remember a few months ago when I saw that you had started posting about your own experience with long COVID, I was just going, yes, exactly. And we're just so just impressed that you were so open with what you were going through, which for me, I found very helpful. So I feel like I wasn't alone, that there's somebody else not only with the symptoms, but who also understands from professionally, where I'm coming from. So I'm so excited about this.
Oh, awesome. Well, actually, to throw the compliments back at you, Daria, you've become quite a big voice, haven't you, in terms of stateside, being a physio, talking about your lived experiences on Twitter. And it's so important to do that, isn't it? For people to have maybe just a person that they can see as being visibly transparent and honest and actually vulnerable in their symptoms and how they're reporting that. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for doing that as well, because it's really important.
Thank you. I've been just kind of rolling with this. In March, a few different physios had encouraged me to tweet. They're just no one knows anything right now, but you can share what you're going through. And that's at least an N of one. So I just said, okay, why not? Yeah, and it's been interesting to see that kind of take off. There was a day I said, who are all these people from the UK following me? But now, we've all been able to connect with each other, which is so important. Even though, this is something going on globally, I think actually having names and faces to put together and knowing that I can contact you or, contact anybody else in our group is it's a really great resource to have. Or even just to look at other people in our group in the post and say, yep, that's exactly what's going on right now. I wasn't able to verbalize it, but you can. So thank you.
Oh, the value of peer support, hey, yeah, immeasurably valuable. So, Daria, I was wondering, would you do the honor of telling your story in your own words of your experiences of long COVID?
Sure. Yeah. So I first started to feel symptoms on March 16th when I was at work and just achy, just not feeling right. And things were already pretty bad here in Northern New Jersey. I also work in New York City. And I can remember my coworkers and some of my friends being like, you're fine. It's in your head. I'm like, yeah, but I'm not like that. Okay. And actually kept trying to push that week. We were then home, things closed. And I kept trying to run and this isn't good. I remember that first week running and feeling cold, clammy, sweaty, which isn't normal for me for running. And the biggest thing early on was breathing, where my chest would feel really tight. I would explain it trying to run in hot, humid weather, but it was the middle of March. I would get pain in my lungs. And I was just very I felt like I was on eggshells. Is this going to get worse? Who knows? But luckily it didn't. I had symptoms, but not, severe enough to go to the hospital or anything. And it's been interesting to look back on my different tweets, because there was a point in May where I was saying something that I'm treating this now like something chronic, not an acute infection. And I didn't know long COVID was a thing. I think it was just starting to come out here in long haulers, but I hadn't come across that yet. So in my mind as a physio, I'm well, I need to exercise. I need to push. I can't become deconditioned. My job requires having a certain level of fitness. I like to be a good example for my patients, and I run and dance. So after I learned the hard way that, okay, I can't run like I used to, I would walk. And I started walking 5 miles of hills every day. And I would have to recover after, but I didn't realize that's what was going on. I would just get in my car and man, I'm kind of tired. That's weird. Whatever. That's normal. And I started to push more. And as we're getting into June, Now I could see there was some red flags going up, but I wasn't putting the pieces together. I started to run a little bit and I would be struggling with a flat 2 mile like jog. And I could look back at my heart rate now and say, oh, that wasn't good. But I wasn't paying attention then. And I would think it was like 95 degrees out, and it wasn't. It was warm, but not, hot. But again, I wasn't putting the pieces together. So I just kept pushing, knowing I'm going to get back to work on site. I'm going to need to walk a lot. I'm going to need to talk to a lot of people. And then that first day we got back on site, it was July 6th, I crashed and I had no idea that that's what that was. I was with one of my coworkers. We're at this big location. She's showing me around and it's early in the morning, so it's not that hot out yet. And I kept looking at her like, how is she okay? I'm thinking it's like a heat wave right now and we're at N95s and I'm just, this is so hard. And I remember she was driving home. I was nauseous. Like I just couldn't, it was so hard to function, but I didn't like, oh, whatever. I didn't eat breakfast. That's the problem. I didn't have breakfast.
Yeah. Trying to find a clue somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sure you've done it, all of us, like just, oh yeah, this is just a little whatever. And I also was in the clinic 2 days a week, which I had been doing for a few hours. And that whole week I just like went from okay to done. But again, I didn't know what was going on. It's like, all right, I just need to try harder. And I was running for work. We have a running club and I was running with them every Saturday morning, about 7 miles. It would crash again. I would get home and fall asleep on the floor and couldn't get up, but thinking, whatever, I'm just out of shape. It's been a couple months. I'm out of shape. It's so ridiculous to look back on this now. But towards the end of July, so I was tweeting about this, but not putting the pieces together again and I knew nothing about MECFS at all. And luckily some physios are reaching out to me in DMs and saying, you need to stop. You need to stop what you're doing. Here's what you know from chronic fatigue. We don't know if it's the same, but it sounds very similar. And it took maybe almost a month for me to finally like concede to this.
Yeah.
And I had a really, really bad crash. I remember it was on August 22nd because I ran 7.5 miles faster than I had been. I was very stubborn running with a group. And it was bad. Like I couldn't get off the couch. I couldn't fully talk. Like to my husband, I was trying to explain things. I was just done. And I had watched, what's it called, Unrest.
Oh,
No.
do you know what? I've actually not seen it, but it's on my to watch list. Yeah.
Oh, watch that. That is what. So at some point around the end of August, that I watched it and went, oh, okay. Seeing her story kind of made it a little bit more. I had to stop being in denial about what was going on. So I stopped running, like just completely stopped running. I danced too. And I have been doing online dance classes this whole time. Since as soon as the pandemic started, things were online, not hard, but I would get winded in the spring. I had a post even where I was just like so frustrated because I was just trying to warm up and was so winded. And so with dance, and it's for fun, so I could do whatever I can, not do stuff, it's fine. But I had been struggling learning choreography, which isn't like me. And then and I didn't know that then. That was in the spring, and I was just very confused on why I couldn't understand choreography because I've been doing this forever. So yeah, once I started to realize I shouldn't be doing it as much. I still kept up the dance classes, but I'm careful to not push. I've been very careful about that, and I actually added some because they're mentally very good for me, and I could just take it at whatever pace I'm at. They're low, they're not high intensity classes, so that's fine. So I've been trying to keep that up so I have something that I'm doing, something that I'm moving. My teachers are great. They know what I'm going through. And those are all online. But then in person, once a week, I go to class and rehearsal, and I'm trying to learn how to pull back, which is really hard. That's really, really hard. Which I would say is purposely why I'm like, oh, good, we're doing this Saturday morning for me. Because if we weren't recording, I would be very tempted to go join the running club right now. They run on Saturday mornings.
Is this part of your pacing by any chance?
Yes. Yes. Yep. 100%. Yeah. I'm learning. Even with work now, we're actually about this. I started, I'm still saying it's a new job, but it's good. Today's a year. Today's 1 year. How to pace in this crazy environment. And it sounds silly, but I was like nervous, but it's okay. We modified my schedule a little bit, just where I go on what day, because it will help with pacing tremendously. It sounds like a little thing, but little schedule tweaks are huge. So I'm very excited to start that next week and see if it helps. Because when I get home from work, I'm done. I
Yeah.
crash.
Thank you so much for sharing that story, Daria, because there's so much there that not only feels so familiar, but also feels so validating to hear those sort of experiences. Like if I think of my own journey, what you described there of having the acute episode, then continuing to try and get back to life, not quite putting the pieces together to recognize that this was the ongoing consequences that we now know is long COVID. And then also the inability to recognize that maybe what we do as physios, as being physically active, motivated, passionate people is potentially making it worse. And then being so grateful to the knowledge that's being passed to us by other communities of people living with chronic health conditions, like the ME/CFS community, because there are some parallels between the conditions and we can learn lots from them. I'm very grateful for that, and learning to stop, rest and pace. And also I loved your honesty there about how difficult that is, and the boom and bust that we go through because of it.
That boom bust is real. Even, oh man, even on New Year's Eve day, so just like 2 days ago, I'm home doing my patient notes, and like I feel good. A couple of days leading up weren't good. I'm like, you know what? Maybe I'm gonna go for a walk or even run. Like this is in my head. All right. And then I'm finishing up the last note, which I will say my last two were very cognitively draining to do, which I keep forgetting that that's a thing I have to be aware of. And I just went, I'm done. Nope. And I just literally was sitting on the floor for the rest of New Year's Eve, where a couple hours earlier I was, fine. And it's just, for me at least, it's easier with physical exertion to say, all right, I need to pull back. But I forget that with the cognitive and how much I can go from being up and feeling good to just, nope, that was way too much.
Oh, it's so resonant. It really is. And I think that, to clarify that, it's your, I'm presuming it's your fatigue that's the symptom that
Yeah.
is being exacerbated by different exertions. And that can be physical, cognitive, or mental exertion that's triggering the fatigue again. But I know that from my own experience that with that, the kind of exacerbation of symptoms because of exertion, similar to or the same as post-exertion malaise, introduces so many other symptoms as well. Like you talked about the difficulty with processing and memory, the brain fog symptoms, like
Yeah.
that's really real, isn't it?
Oh, the brain fog. This is so crazy to me. Growing up, my family would always tease me because I could remember every dance recital, who did what dance for my cousins and my sister, the costumes, the music, choreography, just that stuff's in there. We so good with birthdays and just lots of random stuff. And there was a day where I was at the little grocery store around the corner I go to all the time, and I swiped my card and was like, "What's my PIN number?"
Oh yeah.
And it's a very meaningful number to me. Like it's a number I've known since I was a child. Like I shouldn't be forgetting this number. And I'm just going, oh my God, like how, and I didn't like, all right, just run it as credit. Like I have no idea what my PIN number is right now. And there's been so many little things like that where I'm and I don't know, certain things you can have the strategies like keeping a list of like important numbers and things, but sometimes something just happens in the moment. I'm like, what is the name of that special test? What is that muscle? Things I've known, for so long now. Or yeah, like the choreography of things where I have to be on for a while and just keeping up with stuff. It kind of, there's a cumulative effect with it. And it's hard because working, you don't always know what are going to be the harder days or just things that happen in life. You have no idea. The day that I said I had a really bad crash last time I ran far was Saturday, and that Monday. So I was still recovering, worked. We were recording a podcast for work. My dance teacher was the host. I was super excited about, or the guest, sorry, I was super excited about it. Some other stuff going on. And then my husband had a horrible migraine. Like we had to go to the emergency department.
Oh wow.
During this pandemic, which we've done. Like he's okay, but not knowing that was going to happen. And I wasn't allowed in the hospital because of COVID. So I'm just sitting outside on a bench on my back, like, all right, don't get worked up. Try to keep everything low because that might, set stuff off for who knows how long.
Yeah, completely. So for you, you've tried your hardest, haven't you, throughout all of this episode or period or journey with long COVID to continue to do the things that are meaningful to you. And your hot topic for this podcast is being a dancer and running. And it sounds like you've continued to try and do those things. How has it been for you being a runner and being a dancer, learning to navigate that maybe those things, as important as they are to you, have been negative for your health
Yeah.
and your symptoms?
It's so difficult. So I have been running, I'm 36. I've been running since I was 14 and I started dancing when I was 3. So this is like what I've been doing forever. And I'll start with running. And so I've been running forever, but I go through waves if I'm training for a thing or just running just to enjoy it. And I just like going out, not checking my, my wearable or whatever, just enjoying it. And when I started working in productivity, I joined the running club. And like, oh, we're serious. Like everyone's run multiple marathons. And I was like, well, this is fun. I haven't had this in a long time. And I was working hard, but it was so good. And then I got sick and like, well, but I had all this momentum. Things were starting. I had some races planned. And I'm like, but I just gained all of this stuff. I've been, working on this forever and I've been getting better recently. I don't want to stop, which it doesn't matter. I'm not a professional runner or anything. It really doesn't matter. But for me, it's something I really enjoy doing. And it's one way, it's a good stress relief for me because I can just go out and run and not think about anything if something's going on. Or sometimes I practice choreography in my head, or if I'm giving a presentation, I'll, run it. I love being outdoors, just watching the seasons change. My husband thinks it's funny that I know who has what Christmas decorations. I'm like, but I pay attention to this, I know where all the dogs are. I know the dogs' names. It's a whole experience for me. And so I was very, very, very stubborn to stop. And it literally took not being able to get up off the couch.
So for
and
you,
now
then it was so meaningful for you that you kept pushing through and doing it until you couldn't do it anymore.
Right. And even with the running club, I've made friends. I have people that I hadn't run with people since high school. And it's great. It's a great time to connect with people. Anyone who runs will understand this. You're sharing this common thing. And like, well, I don't want to give up seeing my friends now. They're my new friends. And it's it ties in with what I'm doing for work. But now I'm a little nervous and scared to run because I don't want to crash. So I've only run 1 mile, I think 6 or 7 times since August, which is nothing. And I'll feel good keeping the pace. I haven't run since I think Thanksgiving. But then I'm just kind of, am I okay? Can I do the rest of my day? Should I sit on the couch for the rest of the day? I can't do that because I have stuff I have to do. So that's been really hard. And my husband and I just did a little walk jog some point this past week with the dogs, just around the block. Like, oh, it feels so nice to be outside. It feels nice to be running with Roxy, she's my little running buddy. But then I'm always, but what's going to happen? Because as you bring this up, I think so well, that how unpredictable this is. So it's not like if I was training and I know what level I'm at, I know the pace I can do, I know the distance I could do, and I have no idea.
Yeah.
So that's been really challenging on the running side. So
Absolutely.
we have on Workplace, that's where we have a group for the running club, and I don't go on it just because it makes me sad because I miss it. And I'm in a Facebook group for endurance athletes with long COVID.
Oh, right.
And I don't do a lot in that group. But I read things and like, oh, one, you're seeing people, you want to say stop. But then also like, oh, I want to go back to doing stuff again, but not yet.
I find that really fascinating, Daria, that you say that you want to tell other people to stop, although it sounds like that's been really difficult for you as well.
Yes.
Because I think one of the key things with this is that we know that the lessons that we've learned from other health conditions, particularly ME/CFS, is that exercise, particularly a normal rehab approach to that, which is like gradually building up within your tolerance levels, is completely detrimental. And so there's no evidence at the minute in terms of what you can and can't do in the context of long COVID, but the guidelines are suggesting that extreme caution is needed for exercise. And it sounds like for you, exercise is a real trigger, not only for your physical symptoms in terms of your fatigue, but also your cognitive symptoms in terms of your thinking and your memory. And obviously, when you can't do those things, it sounds like, don't mean to put words in your mouth, but it takes away your role and identity and you.
Oh yeah. And even now, because with work in the mornings, I meet so many new people. And then, obviously new patients in the clinic too. And I'm just like, do I say I'm still running? Like when I don't want to get into long COVID, it's just not the appropriate time. Like, yeah, I still run every day. It's so hard because it's such a weird thing because it was part of my day almost every day, just go out and run. And it's a weird thing to get used to now. Like I'm literally, there's a window right in front of me, like, all right, not. But yeah, it is a big trigger. And I know we've seen things with what percentage of heart rate max to be at, which for me would be like when you go to 55%, like 90s, that's going up the stairs. So the few times I've gone out, I just go slow in a mile and I make myself stop at a mile.
So is that something you've tried to do then? Because I know that in the advice for people with ME/CFS is that to try and manage or mitigate post-exertion malaise, to use heart rate monitoring. So for example, like the Physios for ME group have got a really great link on their website, haven't they, about how to monitor your heart rate and keep it below a certain level to try and mitigate that. I know for myself, that was something that I did. I found it really useful when I was really bad to keep my heart rate below. I tried to keep it below 100, but I was finding my heart rate was shooting up all over the show. And I've got an iWatch, so I use my wearable for that. But in day-to-day life, like on my return to work, the practicalities of that weren't there because I work in a clinical environment. I can't wear a watch, so I can't monitor my heart rate at work. So, you know, I found heart rate monitoring really useful, but also really difficult to do because either it didn't fit in with my day, which is my heart rate was going up stupid levels, like even just using the stairs because I live on a second floor flat with no lift. But then also you can't always wear your wearable if you're clinical, for example.
Right. And for me, it's a nice thing to be aware of. I'm like, I can't stay under that range. It's just not possible when I'm it's so hard to explain, but I'm in the mornings, I'm walking a lot as part of my job. And like, it would take me forever to get everywhere. It's not that I'm walking fast, but if I slow down, like, and even in the clinic, you know, sometimes you just have to go grab something or like you. So I'm learning how to sit when I can. I'm learning how to find when are there times that, okay, I could take a minute here. I'm also an athletic trainer, and as an athletic training student, we weren't allowed to sit in the athletic training room. If there were athletes in there, you weren't allowed to sit, which is crazy. Yeah. I'm still working on breaking that. So I remember, I think now, if I have, you know, max, I have 1 or 2 patients, I can sit. Like, why am I standing? If I can easily sit and, you know, and help them with things, then I will make sure I sit down. Or in the mornings, like if I have just a point where I'm going from place to place and just take a second, I'm trying to do that where I can't stay within that ideal like heart rate range, but at least it gives me a moment to like come back down. Or I just wore last week, I think one day, my Garmin in the shower and went, oh, that's a high heart rate. Okay. Shorten the showers, maybe get a chair. I know I should.
Yeah, those are the things. There's so many practical things that we can do, and they sound so simple, like heart rate monitoring, like sitting down in terms of pacing, whether that be in our working day or in the shower, and then putting those into practice is actually sometimes either impractical or just really difficult to do. I'd really like to ask you about your work environment, because you said that there's been some modifications that you've asked for. I wanted to ask you how that felt to ask for those, and then also what those modifications are and whether you've had the chance to try them out and how they're doing.
Yeah, it's so funny because everyone I work with, they're amazing. And obviously we're all in healthcare, so understand things. But I was just like, because we're so used to just pushing and just whatever comes at you, especially as a runner, just keep going. You just keep pushing. That's what you do. But it's literally every morning I'm at a different location, and some are small and some are gigantic. And it used to be that two of the really big locations were not on my clinic days. So 3 mornings a week I'm working and then I come home, versus 2 days I'm working and then I go to the clinic. And then days changed, and 2 big locations were then on clinic days. And I didn't realize at first, like, oh, this is making a difference. It's a whole cumulative effect of what I'm doing all day. I'm walking a lot in the morning. I'm talking to tons of people. I'm interacting with a lot of people. I'm helping them exercise and things. And it took a little bit to realize that's what that is. That's why. So I asked, can we switch which days I go to which location? So this way the smaller locations are on the 2 clinic days. And everyone said, okay. And I'm like, okay, this is like, I've been so happy. And it's not going to start until this Monday. So we'll see. But I'm curious too, because I have my Garmin and we are running through work the PT health study, which I never look at our dashboard to really look at my like data, because it's going to drive me nuts. I only look at my app. But I'm curious to see if that makes a difference, if there's any changes in anything.
Can you
Because
tell us
that's the,
more about that study? What is the PT
oh,
health study?
oh, this is neat. Okay, this is in terms of, I'll say this in terms of pacing, something I would love to be a part of, but in terms of prioritizing, it'd be a lot. So through work, we have these Garmins, and they were using them
Garmin
before I
is
was
in like a
there.
wearable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yep. They were using them to work with like the strength and conditioning clients to help um, better, I want to better like do their exercise programming. So say today's supposed to be your hard day, but we can look at your data and say, you know, whatever happened, it's not good, modify it. So this way things are a little more specific to you and working with what's going on. It's really neat. And then we started looking at being able to predict illness, seeing changes in the data for the Garmin, like the body battery and the stress score using heart rate variability, that changes are coming up before the person's symptomatic, be it COVID or something else. And it actually picked up on a couple of people. So it's really interesting. So there's anyone can sign up if you have a Garmin, to people can look at your data. And if you're a physio, you can join on to do more and actually start to look at other people's data, trying to pick up on things. So yeah, there's a whole really cool dashboard that we have, and you can pull stuff up. One of my friends who's an athletic trainer is in the study, and he actually had gotten a call that there's some little flags going up, and then a few days later he tested positive for COVID.
Wow.
So that's been happening. It's really cool.
So that study, is that, because obviously you're based in the United States, is that a US specific study, or is that for anybody anywhere in the world that can sign up? Do you know?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I just kind of assumed anybody, but I'm honestly not sure.
Oh. Oh, well, maybe what we can do is
So
we can
neat.
put a link to it underneath this YouTube video, and people can figure that out, and so can we. Like, one of the things that I've found really interesting is I've also used wearables, as we've mentioned, for like heart rate monitoring, and I've also used apps. So I was encouraged to use an app called Bearable. And I was using that app. Although one of the things I found really difficult with using any kind of wearable data tracking or apps was that whatever was happening at that time, there wasn't really consistency in the duration to when my symptoms might be affected. Because I found that there was sometimes I would do too much cognitive work and I would get these vice-like headaches, but it would be instantaneous. However, it would be the next day that I'd get like the physical fatigue, like someone described it as like full body shutdown. Like that would be the next day, and that could take a couple of days to get better. And for me, the tracking was amazing, and I felt like I was getting a bit of a gist as to what my triggers were. Like my heart rate going above 130 instantly brought on, within 24 hours, that full-on body fatigue. And if I pushed it too hard, I got pain in my thighs, like in my quads and my femurs, like the thigh bones felt heavy. Like it was really weird to experience. But that was the post-exertion malaise, all the symptoms being exacerbated by exertion. But because of the unpredictability of it, and also the episodic nature of it, really, I found that wearables were limited at times, because I had to actually know my symptoms and my triggers to recognize the patterns. And I had to go through so many ups and downs and peaks and troughs and make the mistakes so many times to figure that out. So it actually made it a bit of a process to get on top of using technology and wearables, which was using energy I didn't have at times.
And that's the thing, like for me with our study, I don't go on the dashboard to look at the more detailed information, because I'm like, I'm sure I could find more patterns and things, but that's so much. And I've been trying to be aware of, with the Garmin, just what's my stress score, it's my body battery. And sometimes I'm like, why is it like this? I don't see how. And then, so some of my coworkers that look more like bigger picture, but I'm like, but also in the moment, I kind of, if I have to make a decision on something, like, should I go walk today? I want to try to use that data as best as I can. I'm going to back up a little bit too with dance, because I've been trying to use my Garmin when I'm dancing. So when I'm in the studio, because that's when it's hard to not push, because everybody's there and it's so much fun. I love it. I watch my heart rate, and I sort of arbitrarily am saying 125, 130, not really based on anything. But all right, that's when I need to start slowing down a little bit. Or in dance, we call it marking it. You're either doing stuff full out, like 100%, or marking it, where you're not doing everything all the time, which is important, even when you're not sick. So I'm like, all right, fine. And then you'll see, like, I'm not as big with my movements. If there's turns, maybe I'm not turning. If there's like a lot of intricate little footwork, I'm not going to do it all. because getting home from dance, so I'm there for 3 hours on Sundays. I just know I'm doing nothing the rest of the day. We're usually, before COVID, I would get home and, oh, wait, I'm going to finish whatever work I have to do. And I've learned to just, nope, just don't do anything because I'm going to be up early the next morning. So I think it helps. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I'm assuming it could be worse.
Yeah.
So that's been hard. With dance in general, this has been that's been really difficult too. Besides, so there's a whole exercise component of it, which I love and it's fun. But as an artist, this has been so hard for me because in general, this is how we express everybody. You know, if you're an artist, that's how you express yourself. You have whatever your medium is. It's how you help process things. It's how you communicate. Me and Simone had a really good quote that an artist's duty is to reflect the times. We're in crazy times. And I'm just, since March, like, I can't do what I want to do. I have pieces in my head I want to work on, very timely things. Or even just like when I do burlesque, it's fun. It's so much fun. Yeah. And I can't do it. And I like what Sue was saying when she found the watercoloring and
oh yeah, from the last podcast. Yeah, she was finding new ways to channel that creative energy, wasn't she?
Yeah. Which is, and my sister, where she was diagnosed with breast cancer a year and a half ago, she's doing okay now, but she had found I'm painting watercolor during chemo, which was great for her to express herself, even good for her therapy wise, because she had paresthesia in her hands. And I was kind of went in the spring, fine, I'll try something else. I'm like, I hate this. This isn't what I do.
Oh,
I'm a performing artist. I move and it's a big part with dance is like, you're really challenging your body and your art is limited by what your body can do. So I always get frustrated being limited, just structurally, some stuff that like my hips don't turn out great, whatever, but this is a whole other level. I'm like, I literally don't have the energy to finish choreographing something. The few times I posted videos since I got COVID, that took a lot. I even outside of like, I want to perform and that's not, it's not really going on right now anyway, but when performing comes back, like I'm not going to be physically ready to perform. I'm sure I could do something, but you always want to be like respectful of your audience. And if I'm not ready to be on stage, like I shouldn't be on stage. And it's been so hard because I feel like as an adult, I really embraced being a performing artist and having a way to express myself and learning how to interact with an audience, which is something I used to hate doing and now I love doing it. And collaborating with other people, with other friends, whether they're dancers or singers or a magician even, which was really cool. And now I don't have that. Literally, I don't have any of that. I can do my online classes, which is fine. It's important to work on the technique aspect of what you're doing, but to actually be able to express myself it's just not there right now. And I've been joking. That's what Twitter's for. That's my new art.
Do you know what, Daria? Like hearing you describe what dance and creativity means to you there makes so much sense as to why, even though someone may recommend to say, look, you just need to stop exercising, you just need to stop doing it because then you'll be better. It makes so much sense why it's been really challenging for you to do that, because it's integral to your life and your identity and your creative, productive outputs and your sense of self. So, when we're thinking about like person-centered care, this is going to be so important when we think about how services, excuse me, for people living with long COVID that are going to be set up. Yes, there may be guidance and recommendations, but how are we going to work with that in terms of people's identities, people's meaningful activities, people's joys in their lives? And sometimes it sounds like there needs to be a bit of a balance. And for you, it sounds like you've been trying to strike that balance and hopefully you've been getting there successfully.
Yeah, it's hard. It is very hard. I'm sure other dancers and choreographers are like this too. Like something just inspires you. Like you get an idea. Sometimes you're struggling and like have nothing. And sometimes you just think or hear something. Yes, that's it. And like go with it. And I've had that happen still. I'm like, and now I'm tired and now I'm really winded or symptoms are happening. And I'm like, all right, I need to stop.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You know what? I was thinking of something because I wonder that, we've learned a lot from other people with other health conditions in terms of like some of our symptoms, like fatigue. I wonder if there's lessons that can be learned in terms of other people that have experienced disabilities in terms of creative outputs and dance, because there are obviously many ways of being creative and dancing, and it doesn't all require 2 arms, 2 legs, or being able to walk. And so I wondered if there might, I don't know of any, but whether there are groups out there that are specifically for dancers that experience disability.
Yeah, I've come across a little bit over all these years, like, oh, I wish I could remember now. Someone had posted, might have been on Facebook, sort of like a wheelchair,
Mm.
but it doesn't look like a typical one, and it's supposed to be able to have like a really small turning radius. There are things, attachments, so you can have props, like, so this way not just a dancer but an actor, a singer, somebody on stage can easily move around, and it's like not as cumbersome, and it doesn't look as obvious as this is a wheelchair that might not fit in with whatever the scene is.
Mm.
um yeah, it's so hard though, because like, so this is funny. What I'm remembering right now, when I was a kid, one of our dance teachers, the owner of the studio, I think she had a heart attack, and I was really young. But anyway, they would do a big staff number at the recital at the end of the year. So they had her in a rolling chair, and they did a kick line, and they just like pulled her forward in the rolling chair doing the kick line. Or like, I'm trying to remember. She, at this point now, she was much older and like couldn't really dance, and the theme was like TV or something. And in between some of the numbers, she was the Energizer Bunny. She would have the costume on and like the commercial, and just come out and just go across the stage. So they were keeping her in the show, even though she wasn't, at like this like full capacity. But then I'll say on the other end of it, it's just like, that's so disheartening.
Oh.
Like it's a thing that's great. Like if you can still, like, we've had kids when I taught, they broke their leg or whatever, and you find ways, with a temporary disability to keep them in. But then stubborn me is just like, it's not the same. It's
Mm.
not the same
That's the
thing.
acceptance and commitment, isn't it? That's the challenge,
Yeah.
being able to accept that bitter pill that things are different. It's had me thinking about two particular people. One, and my brain is not functioning at the same level today, and I've forgotten his name, and I'm going to have to Google it after we've done this. But he was a performer, a dance performer at the World Physio Congress in Geneva, and he danced on stage, and I've forgotten his name, and he lives with physical
Oh.
disabilities, and he was
Oh.
absolutely amazing. And then I remember also there was a patient I had a few years ago who was going through anti-cancer treatments, who was a dancer, and put on a particular show. And I think it was at Sadler's Wells, maybe, or maybe at the another theatre, forgotten the name of it, in Covent Garden, which was all about dance within different bodies. So focusing on people that may have disabilities. I'm going to have to look these up, but it's got me thinking about it, and how there's so much that we can learn from other people around that, and looking at accepting our limitations for now, and hoping and being optimistic that those things change for us in our symptoms, but how we can progress and still have those creative outputs even with our current limitations.
Yeah, I am. One of the things is, for me, I think that's made this so hard, and like why I've been so stubborn with dance and running and trying to do things, is I was going like 100 miles an hour when I got sick. It's just, life just like literally took off like last year in December. And I had just, and I've been in performing companies, which I absolutely love doing, but I was just starting to try to be a solo artist in burlesque, which is intimidating. They're amazing, amazing performers. And I, in January, had performed at this big festival that I have no idea how they accepted me. I have no resume. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have this whole body of work as a solo artist in burlesque. And I was like, this is fantastic. Like, I can't believe I'm here. Like, the whole time I was just so excited to be in that space, and everyone was like so nice, and people were super helpful too, because I clearly was like so new to all of this. And I was started to go to more shows in the city just to meet people and everything. And I just felt like I had all of this momentum that just completely stopped. That's the one that's been really hard to like, all right. And for better or worse, like, I mean, there aren't shows going on right now anyway, so it's not that I'm missing out on those live opportunities, but that's made that really challenging too, where I think if this had happened at a different point where things were just had how they had been, it might have been not as harsh of an adjustment.
Yeah.
I'm trying.
So because you said like the reason you've been so stubborn, to use your word, around
I am.
persisting with being physically active and doing running and dancing in the capacities that you've been able to. So is it right that it's because of this sudden shift in your functional capacity, the sudden shift and presentation, that you've been kind of almost fighting against it to say, I just don't want this in my life, and I'm desperate to be better?
Yep. Yeah, it is. I mean, I'm naturally a stubborn person. Anyone would tell you that. I'm very stubborn, which honestly has worked well for me for the most part until now. Even I had mono. I had mono right when literally weeks before I started PT school. And like 8 weeks later, ran a half marathon. That was stupid, but whatever. I was stubborn. I was training for it, so I wanted to do it. And crashed, but then it was fine. Yeah, it just, I love running and dancing so much, and like put so much. It's not just the immediate, like, oh, I'm working on this dance right now for the show. It's stuff I've been working towards since I was 3 years old. There's everything builds. And it's so frustrating to say I'm going to lose all, or have already lost so much of this fitness. Some of the technique is still there. Some stuff will always be there, but it's just to take all that time to build that back up. I've even been thinking with running, like, hopefully whenever I can really run again, like, how long is that going to take me to get back to 10 miles? That's a long time.
And that's the thing, isn't it? Because that's the physio in us then, isn't it? Which is the years of training, and I'm going to use the word indoctrination into avoiding deconditioning, to then be in a position where we need to purposefully decondition to not exacerbate our symptoms, is a real trade-off that we as physios are just not used to, and find it so against the grain.
Yeah. And I think, and also what makes that so hard is, like, any physio knows this, that we preach about how important it is to exercise to prevent having all these conditions later that we see are big risk factors with COVID and all these other illnesses. To have, like, a healthy body weight, to have a good heart rate and good blood pressure, and keep your bones healthy, and all these things that I talk about every day with my patients. And like, but what happens to us? Because that's it, like, bone health is just a thing I've always been aware of as a distance runner who was overtraining when I was younger. And well, now what happens if I'm not doing impact, if I'm not, stressing my bones? Is that okay? And I've been watching my heart rate. It's still fine, but I liked when it was in the low 50s much better. I haven't checked my blood pressure in ages, but it used, before I was sick, it was 90/60 because I'm a runner. So now it's just like, it's so hard for me to read things, to listen to things that are talking about why we all need to exercise. Like, okay.
Yeah. And I think that that's just a real honest, transparent vulnerability in this, isn't it? Like, we're not the first people to experience this, as we know from other conditions. And we've heard other people say, why didn't we know about this before? And, welcome to the club and stuff. And I think that I suppose it's a new landscape for us. And even though we may have known it before, or we may have been aware of it, living through it just feels so different now. When you've been so focused on the exercise is medicine mantra, and knowing how important it is for so many health conditions, and then really not helpful for other health conditions.
Yeah, and I think with us, with long COVID, at least for me, what's been really hard too is there's so much unknown, where it's not like a different medical condition where there's a good body of literature. We kind of understand to some degree, what's expected, or any sort of like injury. That's so hard. Like, well, what do I do? What am I supposed to? I feel like so many of us, we do is trial and error. Let's try some stuff. Let's see what happens. Or, this morning there was the post about like what vitamins or supplements. Like, well, we'll try. Like, I'm taking a daily multivitamin. Not going to hurt me. I don't know if it's helping.
I mean, we're all just absolutely desperate to be better, and we'll do anything, won't we? I mean, like, we're taking, like, yes, the supplements. I rattle as I walk around my house because I'm taking everything I can. I mean, like, if someone recommends it, I'm on it. I'm on it, and I'm on it because I want to be better, and I want to be back to where I was. And so many people have talked about the corona coaster, the ups and downs roller coaster of coronavirus.
Yes.
The major thing about it, as you rightly said, is we are living through the evolution of this brand new disease. And even though the symptoms may be similar to other things, the disease is new, and so is the presentation, and so is the evolution of classifying and characterizing these presentations. And we're still shooting in the dark in terms of treatment modalities and intervention. So we're our own guinea pigs at the minute, aren't we?
Yeah, one of the things that I've been trying to manage, I don't even know the right words to use for this, is what I think is costochondritis, where I get this pain and it's like movement specific, like having to anything here like bothers me, lifting. So frustrating. I could go on forever about this, but I really toned down, like, all right, how can I modify things in the clinic so I'm not having to move stuff as much, or stuff at home. I used to pick up my dog Roxy, who's like 64 pounds, just as an exercise. I stopped doing that. And it was like, it calmed down, and I did a Zoom with a physio who's helping me with some breathing exercises too, trying to get into if I'm always apical and like hyperventilating, which I didn't realize I was doing for a while. Like, I need to come back in. Anyway, And then I went to the supermarket with my husband last weekend or 2 weekends ago, and literally picking up the basket and putting in a cart is getting heavy. Just that flared it up immediately. And then I had to take everything out of the cart and put it on the counter. I'm like, this, why? Like, what? I rested it for so long and no idea.
It's the multidimensional, episodic, and unpredictable nature of living with long COVID that just makes it so difficult to keep optimistic, but also to know when you're better, because there's so much out there now, whether it be anecdotal reports or even the most recent, for example, the most recent study that was done by people living with long COVID in terms of characterizing it. Over 3,000 people were involved in that study. The volume of people that had experienced relapses and reported that, it's just so difficult, isn't it? Because it sounds like you've put in place so many different strategies to modify life, whether that be in terms of activity modification, so reducing exertion and pacing, whether it be workplace adjustments that are reasonable adjustments to try and help you work, also adjustments in your day-to-day activities to try and limit symptom exacerbation, like you said, with the costochondritis, the chest pain that you've been experiencing between the ribs and the sternum. And so, there's so much that you've done, and yet still the persistent symptoms are there and they creep in and creep out of your life. And it's really difficult, isn't it?
This is really hard. I'm going to forget his name now, but on Twitter, you saw the post, the guy that had relapsed after 45 days.
Yeah, I know.
That was one where, and I'm sure other people who were like me, where I'm like, that was like my hope. Like I was following him and like, wow, okay, so this is possible, we think. And then he just had this relapse, and you're like, and then I'm sure he's wondering like, what caused it? Who knows? And I've said that with patients who have with orthopedic things, with pain, and they come in and like they're looking for the one thing that caused it when it wasn't an acute fall or something obvious like that. I'm like, sometimes it's not. There's other things might have been going on. It's just little things here and there, and for whatever reason you find like that last straw, which is where we are. But it's just so hard when I'm on the other side of that information.
I know,
trying to like understand.
But you're right. Like it's that multifactorial cumulative effect that makes it so difficult to therefore pinpoint sometimes factors that might be the trigger for change or relapse or episodes or whatever we call it. I must admit, like, I'm getting a bit sensitive around the word relapse at the minute. I think it's totally personal. I just feel that relapse sounds a little bit static and permanent, and I don't quite like it. I've been going for like my episodes because it feels like it would then come back up, and it I don't know, for me it's totally neuro-linguistic in the sense of like there's optimism still in the word, but like it just makes it so difficult to keep going and recognize the triggers with these episodes. But I think you mentioned it earlier on, and I want to come back to it, which is the incredible value of peer support in that. Recognizing you're not alone and seeing other people's successes and challenges makes such a difference in terms of realizing you're not alone in this, you're not isolated, you've got opportunities for support and camaraderie. Yeah,
and I think especially, speaking with anybody going through this, I think is helpful, but especially with other physios, because I think in general we kind of have similar personalities. Many of us are very driven, very type A. And it's been tricky because, especially for me, I wasn't able to get a PCR test back in March. I didn't qualify. So when people like question you, like, well, how do you know? Like, well, I have these symptoms. I lost my smell for a day, so we're going to assume this is COVID, and I sound just like everyone else. But having that extra validation, like, yes, these are other healthcare professionals that we all have the same kind of baseline knowledge within healthcare and how the body works, and we're all reporting this. And it's not to dismiss other people who are not in healthcare experiencing symptoms, but for me, I found that so helpful because I kept finding myself saying, like, I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy. This is going on. This is a thing. And like, it's not visible, which, I'm not limping or something like that when people understand. But when you have this thing that's not visible and there's not a treatment, like thinking about my sister with cancer, like, okay, you have cancer. This is what we do. There's chemo, she had surgery, but we don't have that. And so sometimes I think it's hard for other people to grasp. So having this group of people now that are other physios that understand not only the symptoms, but now trying to get them to work with these jobs we have that are not sedentary jobs by any means, these jobs where we're trying to encourage other people to exercise and be healthy. It's just nice knowing that there's a whole group of people that understand exactly what I'm going through.
Yeah.
And that we also are good sounding boards for each other, because that while we're trying we're open to learning and trying, we also have the ability to say, that's not a good idea, or that's not based on science.
Rein it in.
That's hard.
Come on.
Yeah. That's a challenge too.
And do you know what, actually, like there are some papers now that are coming out that are talking about the importance of honoring people's story, and in the sense of validating people's experience, even within the current climate of an absence of interventions or treatments, or even knowledge of the etiology as to what's going on. Because there are lots of people that are experiencing dismissal, particularly in healthcare systems, around their symptoms, whether that be that they've, like you said, not had a diagnostic test in terms of COVID, but you've got all of the symptoms that everyone else with long COVID says they've got. So, that dismissal is there. And so the importance and the value of honoring people's story and validating their experiences is beyond measurable.
Yeah, and that's something I've enjoyed learning more about as a physio over the past few years. My background starting in sports medicine, as an AT, there was so much
An AT?
Athletic trainer. We're only in a couple countries. I'm an athletic trainer, where there's so much like, oh, they're faking, they're malingering, they're soft, like that horrible mindset, like old school sports things. And now learning this whole other side of things. And like before COVID, like if someone reports their pain's a 10 out of 10, if I'm like this, it's 10 out of 10. That's it. That you said it. I'm not here to judge you. I'm not here to tell you, no, it's not. You don't look like it, So I'm trying to take all that information that I've learned over all these years and like apply it to me, and also try to be hopefully a resource for other people. And people have reached out to DM me, or I'll see a physio tweet about something, and say, and just kind of, I'm here if you need to talk. Or, one person didn't even know. He thought he was kind of on his own. It's like, oh no, there's a bunch of us going through this. By no means
we're all muddling through
just
together.
You. Yeah. And that's been so important to know who, whether it was in our group or just other people that I know, acknowledge and like understand this is the thing I'm going through. That people who have known me know this is not normal me at all. Like me just sitting home doing nothing is not typical. I used to never be home. I was always running around doing everything. And that's been so important, because we don't have diagnostics. We don't have a definitive way to say that this is long COVID. This is a construct that we have come up with over the past few months.
Yeah. It's evolving, it's live, it's dynamic, it's all of those words. It's also unknown. So it's difficult. Well, Daria, I was going to ask if, because we've been chatting for nearly an hour. I mean, time flies when you're having fun, right? So I was wondering if you would share with us a key message that you would like to share as a runner, as a dancer, as a physio living with long COVID. What is your key message that you would really like people to hear and take away?
Don't push. And like, so simple, the stop, rest, pace, which obviously I did not come up with. But this, for me and some people, it's having to change your shift of like, try harder. It's not that. It is not because you're not trying hard enough. I know sometimes in illnesses, we get this like warrior mentality to overcome things, but this is not that. I have learned that the hard way, and still am learning that the hard way. So the trying harder is actually doing less. When I'm trying, I'm sitting on the couch or I'm laying on the floor, like doing nothing. And it makes you feel like you're giving up because you're not actually doing something. But in terms of like physical, mental, cognitive exertion, just like trying harder, push through it, you can do it is not, that's not what works in this case.
No.
And it's learning, I don't know how, but learning how to be okay with that. Understand that's what needs to be done.
So 3 really important messages there, isn't there? So there's the stop, rest and pace message, which obviously comes from ME/CFS communities. There's accepting the limitations, and then also less is more in this instance. So amazing. So really important messages. So thank you so much for that, Daria. Well, I think that this has been a really, really valuable podcast. And I am sure there's going to be so many people out there that can resonate with your experiences, particularly people that may be dancers and runners or anywhere in between. So I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your experiences. And I'm sure we will probably be doing more podcasts in the future as more topics come up. But thank you very much for your time today.
And thank you for doing all this, not only this podcast, but that you have this whole thing going, and with our long COVID physio group and on Twitter, because there's so much information that you are getting out and sharing that I don't know that it's nice having everything in one place. It's nice being able to find more people that we can connect with. So I don't know how you're managing this. So thank you so much. This is wonderful to see. And it's been great to see how much traction everything is getting now, getting more likes, views, and all that stuff, that hopefully we're reaching a lot of people.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you very much.